You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
So, in memory of Cindy Williams, who was Shirley on Laverne and Shirley and passed away today, I am going to teach you two very important words to start the show tonight. A schlemiel is the kind of person who spills soup on their pants at a fancy party. A schlemazel is the kind of person who gets soup spilled on them by a schlemiel. Schlemiel, schlemazel. Now everyone knows what the beginning of Stupid Laverne and Shirley was about. Rest in peace, Cindy Williams. This is Hot Takes. I am producer Kyle, and we will be right back. Welcome into Hot Takes, everybody. I am producer Kyle. This is The Experience. We're going to talk about a bunch of things here, not the least of which is tomorrow's projected announcements. But first, we're going to start with the big question. Of course, on the show, the idea of the big question is it's a question that we're going to talk about throughout the course of the show as we talk about things. It's kind of the overarching thing we're trying to solve in this episode. So this week's big question is there a line is there a line in media that is too violent? Is there such a thing as too much violent? Is there a line you don't cross? So I'm typing that in right now so it can pop up on screen. And then I will tell you why I want to talk about this topic. Is there such thing as too much violence in media? Where is the line? All right. Sorry you had to watch me do that live. I just came up with that in the minutes before the show. So here's why I want to talk about this particular topic. It's movie award season. We're not going to talk about that for very long, but one of the movies that's nominated for a number of awards is 2022's new adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front. If you read All Quiet on the Western Front in school, or you had seen the previous versions of the movie, you know that it is not a movie that shies away on any level from the big questions of violence. Right? I mean, it's a war picture, so it's going to be violent. But this war picture is almost graphically violent. And so my question is there such thing as too much violence in media, and where is the line? I watched this movie, and I had seen some of the older adaptations. I've read the book. But something about this version of the movie really kind of made my soul heavy. Which, you know, it's supposed to do, right? It's a movie with a strong pacifist message about war. It doesn't pull any of its punches. It doesn't pull any of its it doesn't obfuscate or try to get around any of the heaviness of that topic. But I'm a grown person who's pretty desensitized to that kind of stuff. Some of my favorite movies are war movies. I've played the violent video games. And up until middle of last week, end of last week, I would have said, no, there's no such thing as too much violence in media. That the line is drawn by the viewer, right? I have to make the line for myself as to, is the new adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front too violent for me? Right. Stargazer says it's a good movie if it made you feel something. Exactly. I'm not saying it wasn't a good movie, but I'm saying, is there a thing that we can universally agree to is too much? Right? Does seeing someone's something, right? Does seeing a certain moment go, you know what? Check, please. I'm out. And again, All Quiet on the Western Front, especially this new movie, made me feel the same way the old movies did, and the book did. It was the message was clear and strong, and it did make me feel good, and it did not good. It made me feel a kind of way. It gave me a feeling, not necessarily good, but the fact that the thing that remains with me is not the message of pacifism. It's the pure, unadulterated gore and violence that came in that movie. And what's interesting to me is, and this is something that, kind of plays into this, in a film like in a mini series like Band of Brothers, in a film like Saving Private Ryan, in something like The Pacific, some of these other movies that are similar, does the fact that All Quiet on the Western Front doesn't end with a happy ending, I guess is the word I'm going to use, doesn't come to tie itself up in a nice little bow and everybody, not everybody, but people get to go home at the end. This movie ends on a very down note. Does that play a role into your question of, is there such a thing as too much violence in media? And the other side of this coin for me is there a such thing as too much of anything? Is there too much cussing? Is there too much nudity? Is there too much sex? Is there too much violence? Is there too much trying to think of what another category like that could be. I was just talking to someone before the show about the Harley Quinn animated series from DC, and how sometimes on that show it feels like they're trying to be too adult, too much swearing, too much sexual overtones, too risque. Now, that might be me just putting a slightly prudish view on it, but is there such a thing as too much? It's subjective to your life experience. Stargazer says it's subjective to your life experiences. The Joker movie made people feel uncomfortable. I felt that way after watching Blow and Scar. Yes! Oh, Scarface is such a great example. Oh, that's such a great example, Stargazer. Oh, man. Okay, so when I watched Scarface, I had a totally different reaction than my friends who watched Scarface with me for the first time. Right? They had this kind of, oh, well, that was a weird ending. And I'm like, that movie was the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. I identified so strongly with the narrative of this kind of over the top, character, and him getting his comeuppance in the end, and how no good deed goes unpunished, and all of these things that I felt about Scarface. And my friend's like, do you think they needed to shoot him that many times? I'm like, does it matter? And so I think that's a great example. Blow is a movie that I maybe need to watch again in recovery, now that I'm in recovery. Because I will say this, I didn't have the reaction to Blow many people did, and I didn't really feel that much about Blow. But Scarface for sure. And we're talking about Scarface and now my nose itches, which is hysterical to me. No, I think like I said, is there a line that we need to draw? Harley Quinn being too sexual or being too adult or too many cuss words. A movie like Good Will Hunting, the F word is in it like it's that Limp Bizkit song. It's crazy. or Letterkenny, or some of these other things where there's a lot of cursing. Is there such a thing as too much cursing? Does it matter if it's comedy or drama? What dictates that line to you? So you guys as viewers of things, where is that line? What dictates the line as too much violence in media, or too much cursing, or too much sexuality, or too much drug use, or too much whatever? And what are some of the things that change it? That's the question. Where is the line, and what is the line? So tell me in the comments. We're not going to open the phone lines up just yet, if we open them up at all tonight, because there's a lot to get to tonight. But throw in the comments your answer to the big question: is there such a thing as too much violence in media, and where is the line? All right. Speaking of media, we're expected tomorrow to get the lineup for the new list, or the new list of things that are coming from DC Studios. I'm not sure. Tarantino movies are my line. Okay. Stargazer, that's a great show. Is it just you just don't see Tarantino movies? Because like my question are like, oh, I'm a blank on the name now. And I was just Kill Bill. Okay. Kill Bill is a level of violence that's different from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Django Unchained, which was that a Tarantino movie? I don't think it was. Some of these Tarantino movies. Sorry, I'm blanking because Tarantino is all Pulp Fiction to me. That's the only movie when I think Tarantino, I think Pulp Fiction and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are my, those are my go-tos for Tarantino. But those are two very different movies in terms of everything about them. So what about Tarantino makes that your line? And then how do you work with that? Django was Tarantino. What movie am I thinking of that wasn't? Oh, it doesn't matter. But Django Unchained makes people feel comfortable in a different direction, right? In a different way. Yes. Okay. The modern stuff are straight revenge fantasies, revisionist history. All right. That's fair. That's fair. Like I said, I could see somebody saying Kill Bill is a little much. I could see somebody saying Django Unchained is too much. What was that movie he did? The World War II flick. I don't remember the name of that movie either. But, it's everybody has their different lines. So you draw your stuff at the more modern Tarantino stuff, whereas Pulp Fiction might not be such a big deal for you. I like that answer. Thank you, Stargazer, for that input. So the DC, back to what I was talking about, the DC lineup is supposed to come out. Fitting last day of the month and Grant Morrison's birthday. It's true. Tomorrow is Grant Morrison's birthday and the last day of the month. Makes sense, that this is the time to do it. So the DC lineup is coming out, or supposed to come out tomorrow. Are there things you want to see in it? Pulp and Four Rooms are great. I completely forgot about Four Rooms. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a minute, Stargazer, because I completely forgot about Four Rooms. Okay. But so the other question I want to ask, the other question I want to get into here a little bit later in the show is, what do you want to see? What don't you want to see? And what do you think will actually happen with the DC stuff? So we're going to take our first commercial break here in just a second. But I want to remind you that tomorrow here on The Experience, we have the Dan Wickline Show at 5 o'clock. And the reason I want to remind you about the Dan Wickline Show at 5 o'clock is one of two things. Either I'm going to be on it and we're going to be talking about the 3 new episodes of Vox Machina, Legend of Vox Machina, that dropped on Friday over on Amazon Prime. And overall Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games. Or we'll be covering this forthcoming DC news if it actually happens. So tomorrow's Dan Wickline Show is going to be either very important in terms of talking about the new DC stuff, or it's going to be talking about what I think is maybe one of the best animated products on television right now. And we'll talk about both this week. I just don't know which one will be tomorrow because it's all up to James Gunn. Following that show tomorrow, Dan, Jay, Sean, and I will be back with In Stores This Week, where we talk about comic books that are in stores this week. We've got a list of books to read, not the least of which is the new Nottingham book from Mad Cave Comics. And then Minute to Skim It, followed by Mint Hunter Comics with a sales show. So tomorrow is a full day here on The Experience. Make sure you tune in for that. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes here on Hot Takes to talk about the big question and the second question. Is there such thing as too much violence or too much of something in media? And where do you draw the line, and what is that line? And then what do you want to see from James Gunn with his announcement tomorrow? So we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP.
You just finished the last episode of your favorite news show, and you just have to talk about it. But all your friends are ghosting you because of that incident last week at the buffet. Oh, you know the one. What you did to that chowder. Ugh. Keeps me up at night. So what do? Join writer Dan Wickline as he breaks down all your favorite pop culture media. Whether it's a review of the latest nerdy TV show or a dive back into the history of your favorite comic characters, Dan's ready to discuss all the hottest topics live. Join the conversation as Dan live streams Tuesday through Thursday at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. The Dan Wickline Show on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP. Welcome back, everybody. This is Hot Takes. I am producer Kyle. And we're talking about two kind of big questions tonight. The first one, and the big question that I really want to tackle this show, is there such thing as too much violence in media? And where is the line and how do you draw it? And when I say violence, I don't necessarily mean violence, just violence. Is there too much sex? Is there too much profanity? Is there too much drug use? Is there too much whatever? Which we're going to keep talking about. Richard Shipp, if you're trying to get early 2000s Eurodance stuck in my head, you're way behind the eight ball, buddy. But is there such thing, and where is the line? Then we're going to pivot here, this segment a little bit, to talk about the projected announcements tomorrow. So it seems to me that Stargazer had a point with their comments earlier that, you know, with regard to violence, it's subjective to your life experience. And they're right. And they said that Tarantino movies were their line, and that Pulp Fiction and Four Rooms were great. Four Rooms to me feels like such a departure for Quentin Tarantino that I forgot it was his movie. If you include Four Rooms in that kind of pantheon, it changes the whole dynamic of looking at Tarantino movies because it's so different. Same with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think it changes the whole dynamic of Tarantino movies because it's so different. And it's not even that different. It's just different enough, right? Just different enough that it lessens all of the ultra violence that was in some of these other movies that he had recently made. The story, again, for those of you who weren't with us, the first segment goes back to I watched the new adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front, and it messed with my head. And I'm someone who didn't think I could have my head messed with by a movie like that. So, something to think about. Tell me your thoughts on this. We're going to leave this banner up for a minute. And so you guys can chime in. I know Richard's here new, and I've seen John Cole and some other people pop in. So if you've got a thought, throw it up in the comments and let me know. Ship, there's a number of reasons, primarily, and I said this again during the first segment. I think it's that in movies like Saving Private Ryan or The Pacific or Band of Brothers or some of those films, there's an ending that is satisfying ending. People get to go home at the end. Even if they're dramatically scarred and different, people get to go home at the end. In All Quiet on the Western Front, and I guess this is a spoiler, so if you've not seen it, plug your ears and I'll wave my hand like this when I'm done. But in All Quiet on the Western Front, the main character doesn't get to go home at the end. The main character dies kind of this brutal death and sees all of his friends and everyone he's cared about for the length of the movie meet the same sort of end he does. And so, right, it's an incredibly realistic look at it, but I think, and spoilers are over, if you're waiting for me to wave my hand, this is me waving my hand. I think the fact that the realism is there for certain makes a difference, but also, again, I think part of it is just the sheer, again, unadulterated violence. In other movies, you've seen stuff happen, but not seen the violent. In this movie, you do. So, what is there such thing for you as too much of something? And where's the line? I'll take another example. And I'll tell you a story from my youth, as it were. In high school, we had to learn monologues for a theater class I was doing. And I chose to learn a monologue from one of my favorite movies at the time. And the problem was I had only seen that movie on cable. And that monologue was from Good Will Hunting. A movie that uses the F word as if it was the filler word, I mean, it's heavy. And I had no idea. So I tell my teacher I'm going to do a monologue from Good Will Hunting. And the teacher approves it because the teacher didn't know. And I go get it, and it's just F this and F that. And I don't have a problem with the F word. Use it a lot in my real life. It's one of my favorite words. It was not okay for a sophomore in high school. So I think there are times where there's such a thing as too much cursing. There are shows where I think there's too much sexual innuendo because, I can't show some superhero stuff. I can't show Peacemaker to my oldest nephews who are 12 and 13. Their parents would kill me. So where do you draw the line for you? What is that like? Ship says it's all dependent on audience, but certainly he thinks there's too much violence. I think that's fair. But again, how do you draw the line, and what do you do? Ship, I know you have a kid. How do you make that determination as a parent, as a person, for yourself, for your family, that kind of stuff? Throw it in the comments, or we'll go ahead and we'll open the phone lines. 567-318-6507. 567-318-6507 if you want to talk about this. We will accept that call. To talk about this topic. So, moving on from that, I want to talk about the releases or the news, the rumor, the innuendo, the whatever it is, that tomorrow James Gunn is going to release his lineup. And there are certain things we know are safe because they've been said they're safe, right? They're not going to mess with anything scheduled for this year. They're not going to mess with. So on the last topic, Richard Schiff, it's very hard as society dictates what is acceptable. I wish we had a transcript from D. Schneider right now. Oh, that's a very interesting point. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So we know they're not going to mess with anything that's slated for this year. We know that the Harley Quinn animated series is back. We know that Peacemaker is back. There are certain things we know are going to continue from DC that should not come as a surprise. But I don't know what the rest of the lineup is going to look like. Are there things that would surprise you if they were announced? Are there things you hope are going to be announced that maybe nobody else is hoping for? Are there things you hope aren't announced? Are there things you hope are, for lack of a better term, dead? For me, and I've said this before, and I've thought about this a lot. All right, Stargazer, we're going to come back to that for sure. It's a good. I'm just going to use this last line here. I only want more Peacemaker. You're getting more Peacemaker. Guaranteed. And part of that is that's a Peter Safran show, right? That was his baby, so that's coming back. And I don't think that's like favoritism. That show was wildly successful. I think if that show had sucked, they wouldn't bring it back, but they're going to bring it back. They're going to bring back Harley Quinn, the animated series, because that show is successful for what it is. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think the best thing to happen would be for them to say, we're not doing any movies for 3 years. Nothing. We're going to do the movies that are coming out this year and no new movies until 2026. Something to that effect. No new movies till 2025. A hiatus, as it were, for the cinematic part of this world. And focus on the stuff you know you do well. The sitcoms, or not the sitcoms, but the shows. Your Peacemakers, your Harley Quinn animated shows, your CW shows, which were all phenomenal. I wasn't a big fan of Gotham, but Gotham was even successful. Your direct to HBO Max stuff. And the reason I say this is twofold. One, that stuff costs less to make. Costs you $100 million to make a movie like Black Adam or Shazam or more. I don't know. I don't have that information right in front of me. But it costs a lot of money to make those movies. And those movies are only turning a profit of a few percentage points above that. If it costs you $100 million to make Black Adam and you only make $110 million, It's not a good investment. You can't spend $100 million to make $10 million. But you could spend $10 million to make $40 million on a television show. Right? That changes your whole bottom line of everything. And the second reason is so that the Zack Snyder cult can go away. And here's what I mean by that. If there's nothing for them to come out and be against because you're not making any movies, then eventually they'll burn themselves out. Right? If you're not making movies, then they have nothing to compare the Snyder Cut to. The Snyder Cut was better than Black Adam. Okay, great, but that movie was 2.5 years ago. All of a sudden, those arguments mean less, and James Gunn's Twitter can get back to normal. I think the best thing that they can do for DC is not make any movies for a while. Realign their budgets, and then when they come back strong in 2 years. And I mean, because the reality is it's going to take 16, 18 months to make anything that's not already in pre-production. If they don't have a script, they don't have a director, they don't have a lead actor, they don't have any of this stuff already in place, it's going to take 16 or 18 months to make a movie. So you're already looking at a year from now. Probably next summer, a year from this summer. Your summer blockbuster movies a year from this summer will be DC movies anyway, because that's how long it's going to take to turn one of these movies around. So why not just push it out to Christmas of next year? Say we're taking essentially a whole year off, but it's 2 years to make the best things we can make. 2 years from when James Gunn and Peter Safran were hired to make the best things we can make. And just let the heat die down. It's so nuclear right now that they cannot win. Jay says, but are we trading Snyder Cut for gun nuts? The Snyder cult for gun nuts. People talk about Gunn like people talked about Snyder. On both ends of it, Gunn hasn't done anything yet to gauge if he's better or not. Correct. But, Jay, what's the easiest way not to lose a game? You can come on the air. You can talk to me. What's the easiest way not to lose a game, Jay?
You don't play.
Correct. So if you let your opponent burn all of their energy out while you sit on the sidelines and do nothing,
I mean,
then you come in and you run the table.
Yeah.
Right? It's Rocky Balboa letting his opponent punch himself out. Or in real life, Muhammad Ali letting his opponents punch themselves out, wear themselves out. Save your energy and then come in and bang. Drop the hammer. Jay, say it in a French accent.
The rope-a-dope.
Right, the rope-a-dope. And Stargazer, you're not wrong. Gunn is getting hyped super hard. He is. Gunn has been successful, though, with his forays into this field. Both Guardians of the Galaxy movies were successful. The Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special was successful. The Suicide Squad was successful. His involvement with Peacemaker was successful. I want to put him in a position to succeed. Right? Like, I want to say, okay, James Gunn, I'm going to give you all the weapons in my arsenal for you to go out and win this battle. And I can't do that if I'm having to use some of them to bat off the guys going, well, it ain't Zack Snyder. It ain't Zack Snyder. Guess what? I'd rather have D. Snyder directing DC movies than Zack Snyder at this point. That's a callback, Richard Ship. The Gunn fans will keep the Snyder fans around. even if they just keep arguing the same points, it takes two to tango. It does. You're right. You're absolutely right. But again, the gun fans won't have anything to talk about because they're not doing anything. I literally am advocating benching the entire DC cinematic universe. Let the television shows happen. Let the specials happen. Let the animated movies happen. The things that have always been successful, and bench the rest. And again, like I said earlier, it's going to take 16 to 18 months to turn a movie around. So even if they started January 1st with a script, a director, locations, cast, all that kind of stuff, we're looking at June of next year at fastest. April, May, June, July of next year. It's a summer blockbuster for next year. Why not push that movie down the road, like I said, to Christmas of next year? 24 months from the hiring of James Gunn. You have 2 years to win the battle. 2 years to silence the Snyder fans, make the best movie you can, and we're going to drop it at Christmas. We're going to put all of our money behind this. What's you got? What do you got to lose? 567-318-6507, 567-318-6507. If you want to call in and talk about James Gunn and the suspected announcements for tomorrow, or if you want to call in and talk about violence in media. So it's been a hot button topic my whole life, but I'm finally getting to the point where I kind of understand why it might be a little hot button. Is there, and Jay, you're still in the room here, so you can chime in if you want. Stargazer says, I see your point. It's a different approach I never considered. Marvel isn't doing itself any favors. DC isn't. Right. So DC has two opponents. The Snyder Holics, which I think is a better name than the Snyder Cult. Because you said the Gun Nuts, which is better than the Gun Club, because scissor me daddy ass for you AEW fans. But the Snyder Holics and Marvel. And Marvel just keeps shooting itself in the foot. Just keeps knocking itself in the head with a brick. Marvel can't win. Marvel isn't winning. But right now they're not losing because nobody's playing. Right? Because right now DC is playing with a half a deck. They need to rebuild, reload, and relaunch. Kenneth Bird, what's up, buddy? All right, Jay. I hear you. What is one movie or television show or something that you want to see James Gunn and Peter Safran tackle and have it be announced in this first wave?
Look, I know I've been vocal about my being upset about the letting go of Henry Cavill. I am slowly getting over that. I'm still really wanting to see what James Gunn does with Superman. That's the one thing I don't care about having the casting yet. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't think we're going to get a cast announcement tomorrow. I think expectations are a little bit too high on what's going to be announced tomorrow, if it's going to be announced tomorrow. As far as TV shows go, I'd really like to know, since they've canceled Titans and Doom Patrol, are we still going to have Superman and Lois?
That's one that they haven't made an announcement yet on, as far as I've seen.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one to see. Brian Silverbacks, shout out to Silverbacks. Great artist. Go follow him on all the social medias. When his commission list is open, get commissions from him. The dude's a lunatic, and I love him. It says Lobo, and I'm here for Lobo. But here's my pitch on Lobo. Are you ready? Jay, I want to hear you scoff if you hate it. So lean into your microphone.
Already?
I want it to be Jason Momoa as Lobo and Zoe Kravitz as Lobo's daughter, Crush. because Jason Momoa is actually Zoe Kravitz's stepdad. But can you not see those two running around as those two characters?
100%.
Right?
100%.
Hire me, DC.
Yeah.
Like, call your boy, 567-318-6507. I'll answer that phone call. Call me and let me do this for you. Zoe Kravitz and Jason Momoa as Lobo and Lobo's daughter. Also, then you can have a Lenny Kravitz and a I can't think of her name. I just blanked on her name.
Oh my goodness.
Zoe Kravitz's mom from the Cosby Show.
Oh goodness. Well, you said it. Now I'm blanking on it too. Lisa Bonet.
Yeah, Lisa Bonet. We can have cameos from Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet. Lenny Kravitz could do the theme song.
Oh my goodness.
Writes itself. All right. Silverback says, I think we'll be told that they have a DCU timeline that they'll be going off. Self-contained stories. I suspect that's a lot of what we're going to get. But Silverbacks, you said Lobo. Is there something that you would like to see that you know you're not going to get? I think we'll probably get Lobo. Is there something you'd like to see that you know you're not going to get? The pitch I've been making and I've been saying is I want a Taika Waititi directed Booster Gold. I want Booster Gold on a movie that we can tell was made on so much cocaine, it makes 80s Bill Murray movies look like a temperance meeting. That's what I want. Polka Dot Man, I don't care as long as it's good. I love Batista and Momoa, but overall, fewer big A-listers. And that's great. David Dastmalchian as Polka Dot Man was so good. And Stargazer, I don't know if you've read his comic book work. Count Crowley's Midnight Monster Hunter. So great.
Yes.
So great. Make sure you check that out if you haven't. But yeah, David Dastmalchian. Let David Dastmalchian write and star in something.
Yeah.
Don't even care what. It'd be a Condiment King movie, and it'll be the best thing that ever made. And Silverback says, I don't think anything is off limits with Gunn. I agree. I don't think anything else is off limits, but I do think we're going to be hard pressed to get a Condiment King or Clock King or Kite Man movie. Although the three of those in a movie of the worst sidekicks ever, worst villains ever, might be an interesting take. Right? Just a guy walking around squirting ketchup on people. Come on. Stargazer, make sure you check them out. The trade paperback of the newest volume of Count Crowley's Midnight Monster Hunter is out this week in comic book stores. I know because I just looked at the list to confirm what I was getting this week. So make sure you check that out. We are going to take our second commercial break right now. Before we do, I want to remind you guys of something else that's happening here on The Experience. Ooh, Stiltman. Yes. Well, you know, Stiltman, the Stiltman I'm familiar with was a Daredevil baddie. So I don't know that he would work in the DC universe so much. I'll tell you what, Ship, we will hit on our topics and then we'll talk about my pull list for this week when we come back. But I want to remind you guys of something else we're doing here on The Experience. We are racing to 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. If you haven't already, click subscribe, click the bell on YouTube, and let us know you're following us. When we get to 1,500 subscribers, our good friends at Dynamic Forces are giving us $1,500 worth of graded comics to give away on our shows, which is a great giveaway. So there'll be 15 different prizes, I think. Maybe more. Maybe I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But we're going to have $1,500 worth of slabs to give away on our shows once we reach 1,500 subscribers. But Stargazer, I think Stiltman would be a great baddie in the forthcoming Daredevil. Get back to that kind of early Daredevil stuff. But we can talk about that in a minute. We will be right back here on The Experience. Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
What's up, the internet? Welcome back. This is Hot Takes. I am producer Kyle, and you're watching The Experience. I want to give a shout out real quick to Andrew Stanton for that song, The Emerald Weekend. That is our theme song here on Hot Takes. It's been my theme song for years on stuff. Shout out to that guy. Our big question for tonight, is there such thing as too much violence in media? And that violence word can be substituted for sexuality, drug use, cursing, profanity, any of that kind of stuff. Is there too much of something in media for you, and how do you draw that line? So, and we before we got into that last topic, there was some interesting stuff that were pointed out, and I wanted to go back to it. Stargazer has said, "Oh hell no, my kids don't watch anything I watch. I screen everything, and the kids are not old enough to watch what the older kid can watch." That's fair, right? Like, some of that is age. Some of that's how you draw that line. Richard Shipp pointed out wish we had a transcript from Dee Schneider right now, which Dee Schneider's speech to the PMRC and in front of Congress, speech about the PMRC in front of Congress is something that I hold very dearly and could almost recite. But that's about censorship. I'm not saying that things shouldn't be in the media. I'm not saying we should tone down the violence. I'm not saying we should tone down the cussing, the sexuality, none of that stuff. What I'm interested in is, how do you draw the line for you? I have a newly drawn line as it relates to specifically war-based violence in movies. How do you draw that line for you? How do you make it so you don't spend 3 or 4 days with your brain all fogged up because you watched a dude's leg get blown off and it was more realistic than you cared for in that moment? That's the question. And the other question is, what are you looking to see from James Gunn when he comes out tomorrow and makes his big announcements? Again, I hope to see more comedy, less dark. Booster Gold, Lobo, Blue Beetle, Harley Quinn, some of these lighter characters. I don't need to be bummed out by Batman all the time. Just saying. What's up, Jay?
So something I've always said is, and this is coming from a fan of these movies, I've been a fan of this whole universe, but not every character is Batman. And it's just like in Marvel, though, not every character is Spider-Man and Deadpool and Tony Stark with the quips.
Right.
But yeah, not every character has to be dark. Like the Flash shouldn't be a dark character. Superman should be about hope. He shouldn't be a dark character.
Well, I'll give you a prime example of something that we haven't seen since Ryan Reynolds ruined it the first time, and that's the Lanterns.
Yeah.
The Green Lantern Corps and the other associated corps of lanterns are not always serious, but they're not always not serious. Not serious. It sounds like Faces of Death back in the 90s. Not entirely wrong, Stargazer. That's a deep cut, and I appreciate it. That's one of those things that I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that reference in a while. And I appreciate that from you. But no, yeah, you're right, Jay. Like, they don't need to be super quippy all the time. They don't need to be funny. But when was the last time you saw a funny DC movie that wasn't directed by James Gunn?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I totally get. I definitely get the point there, because it's like So Batman sometimes is unintentionally funny. Like he doesn't
Right.
go out of his way. And I appreciate that, but again, I don't need not every character has to be growly and oh, I hate everything or looks like they wouldn't actually save a person.
Right.
That's how some of these characters felt.
There's a great scene in the 60s Batman show with Alfred where it's a very serious moment and Alfred winds up sword fighting a guy using a plunger. Now that show was pretty campy. I'm going to give that one to you, but there's a level of realism in that moment, right? That Alfred is the butler of Wayne Manor. People are going to attack Wayne Manor. Bad guys are going to attack Wayne Manor because Bruce Wayne is a rich dude and it's a soft target. Right? And so Alfred is going to use whatever's around him and his skill, but which we've seen in that show Pennyworth, to defend the house. And if that means he has to use a plunger, then that's what it means. That moment doesn't have to be specifically comedy, but it can be comedic. One of my favorite shows ever is The West Wing. And on that show, it's not necessarily a comedy show, but there are moments of it that are truly funny. And it's because the funniness that happens in our real lives is still funny when it happens to other people. Somebody falling down because their shoes aren't broken in, the soles of their shoes are too slippery and they're not broken in, always going to be funny. People falling off of bikes is always going to be funny. People getting flustered on the phone is always going to be funny. Stargazer says, I was just thinking about Adam West. I think we could use more campy DC. I agree. And I think Booster Gold's the man to do it. We'll see. I promised Ship we would talk about my pull list. And I'm just going to give you the highlights because my pull list this week is in the neighborhood of 20 books. But we're just going to talk about some of the highlights, stuff that people can jump in on. One of them, the first book I want to talk about is Almighty #1. It's an Ed LaRocque book from Image Comics. It is Mad Max Fury Road style action combined with mutilated horror of annihilation. So think about Mad Max Fury Road meets like Saw. Another book that I'm excited for is a book called Black Tape from AWA, which is a Dan Panosian story. Jack King was a rock and roll god who projected a stage persona on par with the devil. After Jack dies on stage, his widow, Cindy, grapples with grief and struggles to protect his legacy, unaware that she is being surrounded by dark forces that covet the master tapes to Jack's final unreleased album. A heavy metal masterpiece that might just open a doorway to hell. Kind of sounds like what happened to Prince. Breath of Shadows #1 from IDW, which I believe we're going to read tomorrow for our In Stores This Week show. It's written by Rich Duke. It's a psychedelic mid-1960s, again, rock kind of story, music story. But it's about addiction and drugs and the horror that can come from that. And the last book I'm going to mention, or there are two more books I'm going to mention. Tales from Nottingham #1 from Mad Cave. If you've been reading the Nottingham stories, that Robin Hood take that they have over there, as well as Where Monsters Lie from Dark Horse, which is written by Kyle Starks. And it's a slasher monster movie, slasher monster comic book, except that it's Kyle Starks, so it's going to be a little bit funny. In terms of later issues, we have things like Minor Threats #4, Quick Stops #4, and then the trade of David Desmalchin's Count Crowley's Midnight Monster Hunter. as well as one of the bigger books I'm picking up this week is a Marvel book. It's the Marvel Masterworks. We were just kind of talking about this a little bit ago. It is Frank Miller and Klaus Jansson's run on Daredevil collected in a Marvel Masterworks hardcover. So that's something to be looking for in your local comic shops this week as well. So last chance right here to kind of weigh in on this. How do you draw the line in terms of what media you consume, where it relates to violence or sex or swearing or any other kind of stuff? And then what do you want to see out of James Gunn's announcements tomorrow? Last chance to chime in the comments. We're only here for a couple more minutes. And while you're doing that, I'm going to remind you of a couple of more things. On Wednesday, we have another full day with the Dan Wickline Show and Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. And we have Pop Go the Writers, which is Dan Wickline again and Jim Beard talking about new media and some of the new shows that are out. That is then followed by Wednesday Warriors with Joey and Ambrosia. Sorry, my brain just reset. Wednesday Warriors with Joey and Ambrosia at 9 Eastern. And then at 10 Eastern, we have Kicking It with Henri. Henri Kompen, who you may know as the writer of Yi Sun Shin, or as that bald guy who yells into his camera a lot here on The Experience on Wednesday nights, will be here Wednesday night, 10 to midnight. And then last thing, on Thursday nights from 10 to midnight Eastern, we have Sketch Up with Mel and Mog. It's our newest show. It's a chance to buy original art created live on the air by artist Mog Park, and potentially art created by her guests. I'm not sure who her guest is this week. So you have to tune in Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern to find out. Do me a favor in our parting minutes here. Head over to Instagram at @the_EXP1 on Instagram. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. We want to start going live on Instagram. I've just said Instagram so many times that the word has lost all of its meaning. That's called semantic satiation. So we'll start this show with a definition. We're going to end the show with a definition. Semantic satiation is that thing where you say a word so many times it loses all its meaning and just becomes a sound. But follow us on Instagram. We're trying to grow our followers on Instagram so that we can go live over there. I would really appreciate it. So for producer Jay, who's in the background and has been talking, I want to thank Stargazer, Richard Ship, Brian Silverbacks, Kenneth Bird. We also had Cool Gamer and everybody else who was in the comments and who's been watching this week for tuning in and hanging out with me. I appreciate it as always. We will see everyone next Monday night at this same time, where we're going to talk about a new topic or maybe the same topic. It depends on what happens in the news. See you then. Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.